Alright guys, welcome back. So we are going to now input our gameplay ability plugin into the editor. That's gonna be underneath edit plugins and go to built-in and you can search for gameplay and you can see two gameplay plugins. One is ability, another one is tags. We need both of them. If you check the ability on, I believe the tag will be on. No, just turn that on too. So both of these things has to be on to make our ability system work. And let's just hit restart now to reinitialize the editor. Alright, so when this is done, you can go check underneath the window. You should be able to see this new gameplay queue editor, and here also when you right click in the content browser you can see gameplay and you can see gameplay ability blueprint. Okay, so those are indications which tells you that you have successfully imported the plugin. Now at the recording time of this tutorial, the ability system doesn't really support the blueprint on the full extent. We do have to do some ground up work in C++. So back here in the C++ classes, go to the character. I believe that's my character here. Okay, so we have to set up something to make the character to be able to acquire an ability. Back here to the header file, what we need to do is we need to actually inherit the character to another class, another interface, and publicly, and that interface is AbilitySystem interface. So we don't have that yet. We can probably include that right now. So include AbilitySystem interface. Okay, and we're just gonna inherit it. So AbilitySystem interface. Okay, this interface has to be there to make the ability system to be able to get one of the component that we will have. So down here or up here we need another header included, which is the ability system component system component right here. So underneath the public, then we can create a U property, not that one. U property, right? And we need to make it visible at least to us in the blueprint. So visible anywhere. Blueprint read write. Category vehicles. Oops. Vehicles to character base. Alright, so U ability system component pointer, let's just call it ability system comp. Oh. Alright, now this is a component, so you know that you have to set that up in the constructor. So let's go there and say ability system comp will be equals to create default subobject and your ability system component. So I'm gonna give it a name, and this is gonna be the same name, ability system comp. And just to be clear that I'm actually using a plugin when I'm using Visual Studio. That's Visual Assistant. It's just gonna be one of the requirements you have to have to be able to do coding very quickly in Unreal Engine's context, because of all the really long function names and very long argument, things like that. So you just have to have Visual Assistant. Just a few things about this Visual Assistant thing. Alt O is how to navigate from header to CPP file. Okay, if you have a function, you can double click on that function and Alt G to go back to the declaration, and Alt G to go back to the implementation. But that's just some of the really easy shortcut that I use in with Visual Assistant. Okay, go ahead and get one if you don't have one, because it's just one thing you do have to work on. But if you're familiar with C++ programming, you should, and our engine, you should already have it. If you don't have it, you can still work on it. You just have to, you know, when I go to CPP, I'm using the shortcut. You do have to actually, you know, open it manually here in the Solution Explorer. But anyway, if you're familiar with the coding, you should be able to find your way around. So let's see. We have this AbilitySystem component now, but what we really have to implement is another function that is actually the inside of this interface. If you go in here, you can see this is the function we're going to override. Again, Alt-G is how I jump here, but I don't know if you wanted to jump here to the AbilitySystem interface. I guess you have to somehow find it somewhere. Okay, just, so you just, I think you have to go here and go to definition, but that's gonna take a while. I think what you can also do is just copy this guy and go to the solution, Control V, and just delete that I button, because that's kind of like an indicator. And you should be able to find the AbilitySystem interface header file and to go there too. Anyway, so back here to the interface. Again, what I need to do is override this pure virtual function, right? Go back here to character header file. I'm going to implement that. Oh, let's take a look at if it is. I think it is a, yeah, it's a pure virtual function, so we don't have to do the super because it equals to 0. So back here to the character base, we're going to do that. Okay, so it's going to be just a function we're going to override, and we just don't have that equals to 0, just constant. And what we do here instead of it, again, I'm using my shortcut. So Alt-I in Visual Studio is how you implement a function. Just Alt-I, that's going to implement that for you right away with an empty body. Or you can just do it yourself in CPP, just type these guys in. Anyway, so what I'm going to do here is just return my AbilitySystem component. Okay. Anyway, so that's going to be the implementation we need to do to at least have the AbilitySystem to be able to know that to get our component, our AbilitySystem component. It's going to do that through this interface that we implemented. All right, this is one more thing. For any ability, if you want to use it, you have to be able to acquire it. Okay, so what we need to do is here underneath the virtual function, let's implement just another function that we can use. I'm going to make it a blueprint callable. So you function, okay, and this is going to be blueprint callable. The category will be equals to the category will be equals to character base. I just give the category the same name as the class. So, and then what we want to do is void acquire ability. Okay, and we're acquiring a ability. We can pass in a argument for this function. For this function, which is T subclass of, and you gameplay ability and ability to acquire as the argument name. So ability to acquire. All right. Now hopefully I don't need this header file. Let's take a look. This one is ability is gameplay ability. That means I can just include that. Abilities. Gameplay ability. Okay, so with that header, we can go to the acquire ability and Alt-I to implement it. What I need to do is, first of all, I need to know like if I do have my AbilitySystem component. So this guy here, and then I also have to know if I have authority. because it's not going to be run on the local machine, and the ability to acquire is what I wanted to also check, right? And then I'm going to say ability system components. I'm just going to give you this ability. Okay, so give ability, and the ability will actually have to be passed in with a wrapper. They call that a app gameplay ability spec. Okay, it's basically a structure with what the ability is and a bunch of other things you can see. Manage the ability instance, somehow keep the track of the instance, and I think that spec also have many other things. If you go inside, you can see it's just a big structure. Okay, if you really wanted to, you can read the entire interface, but you just have to know like what it does store is what class, what level, and input banding, things like that. Alright, so back to the character base. To create one of that, all we have to do is we're gonna say ability to acquire will be the first. Oops, there. Ability to acquire is the first argument. We have to tell it the level, right? And we have to also give it a, let's see, the last argument is also the level. That's the level actually. The second one is oh, that's not the one I want to override. But those two numbers doesn't really mean anything in for now. Let's see. I was doing one of the things. So one of the constructors. So this is the ability. This is the level, and maybe we're doing this one because this can be no pointer. Okay, the index. It doesn't really matter because we're going to set up our input separately from what this is. Anyway, back here. After that, we just say after we acquired our ability, we can say if ability system does exist, right? So we can say ability system conf. You also have to initialize your ability actor info, which is going to be this guy. Okay, and this and this. Okay. Those two arguments, if you take a look, sometimes my intelligence doesn't really work, but those are basically telling it what is the owner and what is the instigator, things like that. So basically it's going to be the same character that we are trying to implement this system. Alright, for anyone who is using the version 4.19, please use this implementation because apparently the class, the gameplay ability spec class, is implemented differently. You don't have that override that I'm using here. So just use what's showing on the screen and you should be fine. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's some coding we have to do to set up the groundwork. We now have a function we can call to acquire a ability. We do have a ability system component. We do have to implement or override that virtual function inside of the ability system interface so that the system can read this ability system component. Okay, so I hope those things are not super hard for non-programmers, but you have to do this in the CPP. There's no other way around for now. Anyway, so this is quite long already, so we're going to stop this tutorial right now, and in the next tutorial we're going to go ahead and try to really implement the ability here inside of Blueprint. Alright, so before you hit that compile button, a fair warning here, it's not going to be able to compile. The reason for that is because it's part of the module that is not included in the system in the default settings. You can take a look at your AbilitySystem.build.cs file or whatever your project name is, and then .build.cs file, and that's the dependency modules you added in. And you have the core object, the engine, the inputs. Sometimes they give you head mount display, but you need to add the gameplay abilities and gameplay tags. Those two are required to make it to be able to compile. Okay, now you don't need the AI and gameplay task. That's something else I added. Okay, but you need those two, gameplay ability and gameplay tags, before you hit the compilation button. And also, it's kind of like part of the plugin. So here in the Unreal Engine's project, you can see now underneath the plugins, you have the runtime, right? And you have the gameplay abilities somewhere, right? And that's where the source of this gameplay ability is. And you can see there are some familiar faces like AbilitySystem component, for example. And the interface is somewhere down the way too. But anyway, so add those two modules before you compile. If by any chance you have like a bigger issues that it wouldn't compile even you add those modules, but that never happened to me. We have some solution here on our QAs, and here Rich have a really good explanation on how to fix that issue, but I couldn't mimic that issue on my end. So you can look through how they did it. Like they have to generate the Visual Studio project files to somehow clean up the already generated intermediate files or something like that. So anyway, so that also means that if you're not familiar with C++ or Unreal Engine compilation process or the module stuff, and you got warnings, you don't know what's going on, right, then don't compile until I click compile, right? Otherwise, there could be more stuff you have to do before it can compile. So just be a little bit more patient. And anyway, I think that's the only issue. I don't have other complaints throughout the rest of the course, but if you do have any issue, just don't hesitate to ask me, and we will address that as soon as possible. Okay, now you can move on to the next video, which I will cover actually the part that we add those modules in the build file. Okay, see you next time.